Why do forwards curved blades cut so well? Do they cut so well? Let's talk about this. Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now, one thing I could do is get out a bunch of straight blades, a bunch of backwards curved blades, and a bunch of forwards curved blades and chop up a bunch of things, whether it's water bottles, wood, plants, whatever. The fact is, I've done this lots over the years. Now, one of the things we have to concede is in history and in the evolution of blades, and not just swords here, let's consider also things like axes. Okay, this is from Ravensbeak Forge, very nice tomahawk, or things like kukris. This is from Kailash Blades, very nice kukri. There are forwards curved blades, straight blades, and backwards curved blades. And there's been some discussion recently about how each of those interact with a target differently, how they chop differently, what they chop better or worse. Now, I've done lots of videos in the past, particularly looking at straight versus curved blades. Now, one of the advantages of a curved blade, I'll just grab a curved blade. So here we've got an Easton sabre from Coveton, which are used for fencing. These curved blades, so we use these a lot in sparring. Now, these are obviously blunt because we use them for fencing. And we do notice some differences between a curved blade and a straight blade. There's an obvious one that it's curved, so therefore it's easier to thrust with a straight blade for the most part. That being said, there are angles you can come in with thrust with a curved blade that you can't do with a straight blade. So that all aside, let's just talk about the effect of hitting things. Well, first of all, we do find that curved blades seem to assist you in edge alignment. Okay, so it's not necessarily, if we just ignore do they cut better or worse, put that aside for a second, do they seem to hit more reliably with the edge? I would say yes. I believe that curved blades do assist you somewhat in edge alignment, and if your edge alignment is better, the end result is that, let's say, you know, out of 100, you're going to have a greater percentage of cuts that work well. Now, we've also talked about the angle that the blade meets the target at. If it meets it completely perpendicular, then essentially you're travelling at 90 degrees across the edge geometry. Whereas if you meet at a slight angle, then indeed you can halve that to 45 degrees, for example. And curved blades assist you in that. You can artificially do it with a straight blade. If I just grab this LK Chen rapier, you can hit the target at an oblique angle like this, and that will have a similar effect, but it's never going to be quite as easy or quite as natural with a straight blade as it is with a curved blade. And finally, another reason that I've talked about in previous videos, and it's particularly pertinent to cavalry swords, and is probably why we find curved cavalry swords so popular throughout history, is that when you hit something, it makes it easier to draw across and through or past the target. So a straight blade is more likely to stop on the target, which obviously if you're moving on a horse can be a problem, whereas a curved blade draws across more easily. So now let's come to forwards curved blades. Well, forwards curved blades are an interesting thing. So here's essentially a yataghan style blade on a European hilt, military hilt. You might remember these from a previous video. If you remember what this is from, there's a specific video I did with someone else, then post below if you remember it. But anyway, this is a yataghan style blade. Now, yataghan style blades were probably most popular in the Ottoman Empire, but they were emulated in the French military, the British military, American military, so on and so forth. Okay, they were used by all sorts of people for a number of reasons. One of those being because of having the point out of line. They make quite good for bayonets where you've got to muzzle load a musket. It means that the point is out of line for you to ram the ramrod down the barrel. So they're useful for that. But in addition to that, if you look at Colonel Mary Mong's treatise, he talks about forwards curved blades having some of the same cutting benefits to backwards curved blades. That is, when they hit a target, they're more likely to do it at an angle. This time it will be at a forwards angle instead of a backwards angle, but that means that essentially the edge geometry is going to be in some cases halved or at least reduced relative to the thing they're hitting. So in that sense, a forwards curved blade has the same, shall we say, slashing effect that a backwards curved blade has in reducing the edge bevel angle. But in addition to that, it has an additional effect. So one thing I didn't mention or I kind of slightly mentioned, was with a backwards curved blade, the blade is going to naturally draw more across the target than with a straight blade. And that has a shearing or slicing effect on the target, enhancing the initial effect of the chop. So rather than just having a dead chop, you then have a drag or further slice into it. And this is something which is made big of in Indian, Persian and Japanese martial arts with curved blades. Now, with a forwards curved blade, we have almost the opposite effect in that when you hit the target here, rather than being dragged across this way, it will actually be dragged down here. This is not sharp, incidentally. That's why I'm placing my finger against the edge. It's not been service sharpened. So the thing you hit is going to come down towards the middle of the blade. Now, so in one case it's drawing out, and in the other case it's kind of chopping in. In both of those cases, we have a slicing or pushing cut or drawing cut effect, which is obviously useful if you want to cut more deeply into a target. Okay, so that's one thing. With a curved blade, be it backwards or forwards curved, you're more likely to get a slicing effect, either a push cut or a draw cut, relative to the target you're hitting. But there's something else as well. What is it? I think to a certain degree we get the edge alignment feeling. Now for this I'm going to put the kukri down, although you do get this absolutely with a kukri. Regardless of whether you've got a cylindrical grip or an oval grip or a flat-ended grip, you can feel absolutely which direction with your eyes shut the edge is pointing in. So you know that with a forwards curved blade, you know which direction the blade is going because you can feel it in your hand. And this is also true of axes. Now I've talked about the fact that I prefer axes with a teardrop shape or oval shape because it helps you index the edge. But there are lots of historical axes which have cylindrical round shafts. You find Slavic Viking era and post-Viking era axes which have round shafts. You have Indian Bolivar axes which have round shafts. You have Persian Tebar axes which have round shafts. So you do get axes with round shafts, and it doesn't seem to be a problem because you can feel in your hand, because it's asymmetrical and will naturally hang, especially when you're cutting downwards, which direction the edge is in, which will assist edge alignment, which doesn't inherently mean it will cut better, but it will assist the edge alignment, and if you've got good edge alignment, that will help you cut better. But is there something else? I think there is. So I've always had the impression that when you have an edge which is forwards of your hand, essentially, and we can have that with something like this Indian Susan Pata here, we can have it with the Nepalese kukri here, or indeed we get it with almost all axes because the blade is in front of the axis of motion, okay, so the lever. Because the blade is in front of the lever, a few things are going on. We talked about the edge alignment there, but also you impact the target in front of this lever here. Now I've often tried to wonder why this should be important, but it is always the case with axes, isn't it? Going all the way back to the Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, axes, the blade is in front of the lever. You could have a mass here and have the edge along the lever, but it's not like that. It's always in front of. Now, part of that is because when you're chopping wood, you want this blade to penetrate into a trunk, and that might be more difficult if it was in line with the shaft. Okay, so it can be functional. But in addition to that, anybody who has chopped things up with equally weighted and balanced objects will notice that blades which are set in front of the lever for some reason feel like, this doesn't mean they necessarily do, and this is where I'd be interested in your comments, but they feel like they chop better. Is that true or not? I don't know, maybe we need to test it. Maybe this is something I could get together with someone like Todd or someone else and test. But it certainly feels in the hand, and when you chop, for example, if you try and chop wood with a Bowie knife and then you chop wood with a kukri, fact is the kukri feels like it does it better. Now, one thing that some people have mentioned is this is to do with wrist angle. And when you impact a target, because with a forward curving blade or a blade which reaches forwards of the lever, it means that you hit the target before your wrist is fully extended out here. Whereas with a straight blade or straighter blade or a backwards curving blade, to hit the target, the wrist has to fully open up and extend out in order to hit it. Which when you're chopping particularly downwards at something like wood, but equally when you're using a weapon, When you hit the target early on, it means that you keep a stiffer, more angled wrist, and that is more natural to humans. We're not actually particularly well designed to do that. You end up with the wrist in a rather weak and extended position, but if you're hitting here, it's still in a fairly strong position and quick to pull back and chop again. So it can be a cumulative effect as well, because you can repeatedly chop, 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 because you're not sending the wrist far out every time. What do you think? Why do you think blades that project forward of the main lever feel like, or perhaps do, chop so well? I'd be really interested in hearing your ideas and theories, but hopefully some of the information that I've put in this video might be new to some of you, might be good revision for some of you, or maybe will make you think about new possible reasons why forwards curving blades, and let's remember these have been popular throughout history, the coppice, the falcata, the sosampata, the kukri, loads and loads of blades in history have been forwards curved, the yataghan. Why? Why was this such a popular blade form, despite the fact that it's quite difficult to make? It's far more effort to make a kukri or a falcata than just to make a straight knife or blade. Interested in your comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you back on the channel really soon, and I appreciate all of your support. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.